tired. I'm hanging on a wire, a foot over the fire, and it's burning, I can feel it inside. Done with the same cliche, done with the day after day. There's got to be a way. Now is the time to break the tide. I'll live, I'll die, for what is wrong and what is right. I'll take the pain for all the ones without a name. To be invincible, we'll be invincible. To be invincible, we'll be invincible.
Hey guys, Two Guys in Hockey Talk Season 4, Episode 35. And I got my co-host, Pavel the Cat. And we got former Grey Cup champion, formerly known as the Edmonton Eskimos, now the Edmonton Elks, Jed Roberts, a super fan of the Edmonton Oilers. Well, before we get a little bit into this, Pavel, what do you got for us? What do we need to talk about?
Well, we've got a lot to get through the NHL before we get Jed's thoughts on some of the things. But first, we want to let people know we're here every Wednesday night at 7 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. Make sure you give us a follow on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. We love it. We've partnered up with Sportsnet Empire, who does all our sports content for NBA, NFL, whatever you want, UFC. They've got you handled, and we are their hockey content. We are also working with JR Designs, who have designed our website, and they are phenomenal. Our site is up. We've got a few articles up there. Go and check it out. Give us a follow. Give us a read, comment. And Evan, what do you want to share? How you doing overall?
Hey, man, I'm doing fabulous. Hey, we also want to make a quick mention over to Penny Billionaires, our exclusive rights to their song. Again, you've got to follow them, man. Electronic hard rock band out of Arizona, which we will be talking about that same city tonight. So, yeah, remember, we got some articles if you guys want to catch, as well as you can follow our former guests, including our former Grey Cup champion friend here, Jed Roberts. So go check out if you want to follow anything that they're doing or anywhere on social media. Well, let's get into it. Jed, welcome to the show tonight, man.
Hey, thanks for having me. It's always nice to be on here. I had a really good time last time I was on. We had Willard Reeves, and just loved listening to him tell stories about his playing days. So it's good to be back. Thanks.
Yeah, you came in just how many was it, 4 or 5 years after he left?
Yeah, so I mean, I remember watching him, and he was a really big deal in college, and I know he went up to the CFL. His head coach there toward the end of his career was my coach in college, Mike Riley. And
oh, no way!
I remember talking to Mike Riley about him, and so yeah, when I got the chance to it was the first time I'd actually ever had any interaction with him. So I didn't say anything that night, but I was starstruck. It was a pretty big deal for me.
Oh, man. Yeah, I was the same as you were coming into that night. But, man, you won me over. I knew you on the field, but didn't know you off the field, even though we have a mutual friend in Trent Brown. And by the way, man, he smacked me silly with we're going to talk about the Edmonton Oilers. I had some different thoughts. I got Ryan Nugent-Hopkins up behind me. Trent Brown had an interesting take on it. He shared it on his Facebook, man.
We talk about it every day. Yeah. Oh, I know what you're talking about. Yeah, it's pretty funny.
So, okay, where should we start with Jed tonight here, Pavel?
Let's start with the Oilers. Since they were eliminated, there's just been some exit interviews. Jed, what are your thoughts on the overall playoff run and kind of the highlights and maybe some of the areas of growth that the team needs to focus on moving forward?
I feel like even though they didn't get as far this year, I think they had a better team. It seems kind of funny saying that, considering the numbers, but I think because their money situation is going to be a little bit better, I think, coming up here. They had a couple of albatross contracts there in the past they were carrying for years. Clef Baum, comes to mind, and Mike Smith now. And that not necessarily the albatross one. It's more like Lucic from years past. And, there was some pretty bad money management that hamstrung this club. And, you only have that window with the two greatest players in the world, and they're only going to be around for 2 more years together. So, the time's running out. So, and I think that the pieces, there's some interesting acquisitions at the trade deadline with Ekholm and, it just feels like they're edging closer to getting to where they need to be. Skinner's a rookie goalie, and I think people sometimes forget that. It takes time for especially goalies. People talk about defensemen. Goalies are really, really like you could destroy a goalie very quickly, and I think that it was interesting watching the way they managed him and Campbell in the playoffs. And I'm not the guy. I'm a football guy. I'm not going to second guess the head coach and Woodcroft's decision to put Campbell in there. But I think people have to remember that Campbell's the big money guy, right? Like, so if there's any hiccup at all, they're going to put him in there. And I think it's kind of it was nice to see Campbell respond the way he did. Like he did pretty well.
Excellent.
The thing that drives me crazy about him is he starfishes really fast, and then it's like, what are you doing, dude? Get up, like you're giving me more gray hair.
so let me ask you a question, Jed. So as a professional athlete yourself, now be it football, but there's still that same thing when you hit the field. So when you got started, you took to the field, there's going to be mistakes you're going to make as a rookie, right?
Yeah.
How did it affect you personally? On a good play, on a bad player, maybe there's something. Now I know you're not in that same detriment. I mean, being a goalie is like being the quarterback, essentially, almost, right?
Yeah.
So like how did you handle it? How do you recoup yourself?
Well, it's crazy because there's nothing quite like it. When you're playing professional sport, your livelihood, depends on your performance or lack thereof. It's pretty crazy. And I would say that goalie is probably one of the highest pressure positions in all of sports. I can't.
Wow.
There's not many that because you let a goal in, you're and it's like being a kicker, right? Like you miss the kick, you lose the game. But kickers are different. We won't talk about that. But goalies out there, and it's almost like the goalies are competing against each other. They stare at each other from across the ice to 200 feet, and if that guy's doing well, then the other guy doesn't want to get showed up.
Well, it's like maybe it is like a kicker. You're that far away from the other kicker, right?
Yeah, you never actually talk to each other until you fight. Well, I mean, in football, kickers don't fight, so that's what hockey's awesome that way.
Now, you've played at an elite level in the CFL, and you've won in the CFL. What is something that you believe that the coaches or people on the team that maybe have been through it before need to convey to some of these guys, to that core, in that leadership group, whether it is McDavid or Drysdale, or maybe bringing in somebody in to say, hey, this is what it's going to help us to get over the hump. Because
I guess
I'm sure it's been before you got there, there's been some hardships.
Yeah. What I was leading up to was that if you took a look at the teams that are left in the playoffs right now, you see Florida, Dallas, and Vegas.
And Carolina.
Carolina, yeah. Those 4 teams have been playing the same style of hockey for probably a month and a half, 2 months now. They play playoff style hockey. They really collapse in on the goal. They don't let any shots through. They always get sticks on the puck. They're incredible. And they play a system defensively that really makes it hard for teams like, Edmonton when they're on the power play. In the playoffs, man, everybody knows the whistles go in the pocket, and you're not going to get those, 4, 5, 6 power play opportunities. And that's kind of what the Oilers for 5v5 need to get better. They need to, and with that comes some guys winning matchups. And that's one thing that Jed Brown always talks about Nugent Hopkins, is that he's so physically, demure that he doesn't really do that. He's not a physical player, and that's not what he does. He's a power play wizard. He's really good at getting the puck and distributing it, but he's not the guy that's going to move somebody off the puck. And so when Trent and I were talking, why are you putting Nugent Hopkins and Yamo on the same line, top 6? That doesn't make any sense. For me, the game was over because Eichel and Marchessault, they just feasted on those guys. It was not. And there was actually a couple games before them. It was the game before that where they actually had a 3-minute cycle there where they just played keep away. And Yamo was like a little kid. And Nuge the same. But Nuge is not that guy. I'm not going to sit there and think, I can't put him in a position where you expect him to knock people out. You got to bring other guys for that. I don't think that Yamo should be in the top 6. So But that's
So
me.
now, so you would rather him play as a third line center than put him in even with McDavid on another line?
Well, I don't think that Nuge can run his own line, personally. I think he's
Yeah.
a complimentary piece. He's not a guy that can drive play.
Yeah.
You know, he's not a, you know, people criticize Marner in Toronto, but Marner's
He
more
can
physical
drive.
than Nuge is, right? And he drives
he can
play,
drive.
right? And so,
Yeah.
like, that's the difference, right? Nuge is a great player. I'm not going to take anything away from him. You don't get to where he is by, you'll score 100 points by luck. I mean, it helps having two of the best players in the world on your team, but, you know, it's funny because the playoffs came around and the style of play changed and he struggled, you know, and he just wasn't there. He could be nursing something. I don't know. I mean, that's speculation at this point, but you know.
So this is what I find very interesting, and I didn't get into it. And by the way, Trent, if you do catch this show, we've thrown you under the bus about what you think on Ryan Nugent-Hopkins. Man, I love him as a player. One thing that I do know, he's got an incredibly strong core. The guy is incredibly strong. He can work those boards, but it's almost like the intensity. He doesn't know how to. Do you remember hearing everyone on Evan Bouchard saying that, you know, Evan Bouchard doesn't know how to speed up the game. He does everything too slow. But when playoffs came, he started speeding the processing of time. Yeah. And I feel like Nuge is still learning how to process. He's too busy playing a 200-foot game
10
in the middle.
You know what I mean? That's Trent's point. Like, it's been 10 years, dude. Like, you either are or you aren't, right? And
So he's a regular season guy. So where do you go? Where do you go with Nuge? You know he's signed to pretty much his lifetime now here. Are you playing him your third and then your power play in PK?
I don't know. I just think you improve the pieces around him. You know what I mean? Like, if you're going to hang your hat on this kid, and obviously, you know, that's probably what's going to happen. He's going to stick around. But what I was trying to say is getting around to my point was they brought those guys in at the trade deadline. I think that with those pieces that they brought in, and with Holloway coming up, and they've got some pretty interesting prospects coming up through the farm. Bourgeot comes to mind. They have a more physical team now than they've ever had. Now it's just a matter of getting everybody playing together and playing a system that is a playoff style system, and not just, you know, relying on your power play to kind of get you through and skate through the regular season. And then when the refs put their whistles away, now you're left with, you know, holes in your lineup and you're losing matchups. You know, like that was my thing. I think that's what did it. Vegas, man, full marks. They played really, really well there. That's a really strong team. You know, not a lot of weaknesses on that team.
No, they really brought it, and there really was, I would say, Jack Eichel coming out party to prove that he was and maybe should have been. I mean, I know he won't ever will be going first in that draft behind McDavid, right? He was trying to prove not only to McDavid, but to people, to show you, like, listen, I'm still relevant and I'm a top 10 to 15 center in the NHL. I could be even top 5 if I turn on that knob to 11. So you could definitely see, like, what he was bringing to the thing. It definitely is interesting because you do need grit and you do need that size. And I think one of the most surprising players for the Oilers finally that really came out of his shell after having kind of a mid-season was Warren Foegele. What are your thoughts on him? Do you think that he really brought that physicality, especially now that it's been talked about that he had a wrist injury?
Yeah. So what I saw was Foegele go up and Yamo go down, you know, because Yamo was playing way over his head last year, I felt like. I mean, maybe it's because of his stature, but I felt like Foegele made that step, and then Yamo kind of, you know, regressed a little bit. It could be due to whatever, right, injury or whatever. But I find that when you're talking about playing at that level or professional sports, you learn from your mistakes and you adjust your game accordingly. And that's one thing that frustrates Trent about Nugent-Hopkins, is that he does sometimes to sort of float, and it doesn't seem like he really gets the urgency, and that he doesn't, you know, whereas Bouchard, like you said, we alluded to him sort of, you really saw him pick up the pace, and you really saw him. But also those guys like Ekholm, you know, he's so calm and cool when he gathers the puck, and it doesn't look like he's panicking. You know what I mean? Whereas you see Desharnais, and he's like, oh my, what are you doing, dude? You know, like, just put it along the boards, right? When in doubt, just put it along the boards. Don't put it out there in the middle.
So what would you think if you're looking at it? So we've talked about RNH didn't play the physical game they need him to play in the top 6. We talked about Skinner. I know for any of you guys that kind of follow, again, you can follow me at Revenev on Twitter. You can also follow Pavel at hockey_2. But when you're following me, you're going to notice that I will speak to the goalie stuff a lot because now, first of all, I feel like Skinner was put in a bad position. It was a no-win position for him. It was like it was basically he's going to go home or he's going to win it all. He's going to be the Conn Smythe guy. But you can't win with a .883,
No.
And I said it all along. You got to be able to have those saves. And because a goalie makes a really good save, which Skinner did often, it's got to be like the Grant Fuhr days if you're an Oiler. Yeah. He makes the clutch save that the team doesn't go ahead or the team doesn't tie it up.
That's what the kid in Vegas did. He came in off the bench and he just was flat out dominant. Like that team, the Oilers in the last period, they probably played some of the best hockey they played all year. And they had no answer for Smith. Like he just completely shut the door, and that's what we needed, and we couldn't get it. And it's not because of anything Skinner did or didn't do. I think there's probably a lot more to it in terms of like what's going on in front of him defensively. I saw a lot of lapses in terms of like, well, are you zoning this or are you manning this? Right? There were some real myths, and then you see guys wide open in front of the net. That shouldn't be happening. Like there were a lot of, like early in the game, Vegas had a couple of really easy goals where it just looked like the communication wasn't there between the defensemen and there weren't the switches weren't made or whatever. I mean, I'm not a 100% hockey guy, but it's more about position, being in the right position, right? And it seems like that's something, especially with a guy like Bouchard who's young, you can learn. And Skinner, he's a bright future, man. I'm excited about him. Like, goalies don't come, they don't just fall out of trees, right? Like, and this is the guy that the Edmonton Oilers. Yeah, they developed him, right? He's a local kid, and I have all the time in the world for Skinner. And I'm really looking forward to see what he can do next year with this year under his belt. This experience is just going to make him better.
Well, maybe you guys can let me know, because one of the keys in Vegas was because they have the goalie whisperer called Sean Burke, and he's really recovered a lot of the goalies that have gone over there who have struggled. So Brossoit, who used to play backup here and then went to Winnipeg and struggled in Winnipeg, and then now he was their starter before that injury in game, I think it was 2 or 3. And then Aiden Hill was kind of up and down all over. He went through a few different organizations, including Arizona, which we'll talk about later. You had Logan Thompson, who nobody thought was a starter and ended up being elite. And then, of course, they picked up, just as a backup for depth, Jonathan Quick, who we know is a Hall of Famer. But your thoughts, Jed, maybe on goaltending, goaltending coaching and what that looks like, and Evan can maybe chime in as well.
Yeah, I know Edmonton's had some, like, I see on social media people kind of criticizing the Oilers for not making a change there, like goalie coach, because it doesn't seem like, especially in the last couple of years, being so close, coming into the playoffs and then having some, I don't know, like I don't have the answer to that, but I do agree with you. Like a great coach like that can make a huge difference, and especially when you're talking about a young guy or even a guy that's older that may have lost his game, and then you get someone that can take the way you play, strip it down, and say, okay, so let's focus on a couple of different things. Let's simplify your game, and let's just take the guesswork out of it. And I think that Vegas, in particular, with how strong they are defensively, it's probably a lot easier to do that in Vegas than it is to do it in Edmonton, because Edmonton's got a little bit more of a freestyle, free flow. It's like jazz as opposed to like the structured classical composition. They're a little bit more free flowing here in Edmonton, whereas in Vegas they have a very set structure. So they know where the pucks are coming from.
I know, Pavel, you and I have talked about this on the show here, speaking not just of the Oilers, but other groups. And I mean, Burke's obviously not just the goalie coach anymore. He's director of development for goalies. And we'll talk later on our show if you want to talk more about Sean Burke, even in his search for a GM position, actually, as he's trying to work his way in, guys. But let's just say one of the things that what we're noticing is, and first of all, people need to know, I absolutely love Dustin Schwartz. I loved him from the U of A. Yeah. I loved him to see what he does. I think he is a wonderful coach. But what we're noticing, and this goes back to
as a fact, he trains Carter Hart in the off season, who has been elite. Sorry,
exactly. So and if you're trying to compare the goalie, but let me tell you something. And I was going to say, in case you're not just a person who follows the Oilers, Jamie Baskow, who writes for Flyers Nitty Gritty, beat writer in Philly, even shares this, and he talked about it even on our show, how he loves Carter Hart. But what we notice is Carter Hart drops into that butterfly quick. He's a big guy, but he's athletic with it, like a Hassett kind of a player. Whereas going back to Doobie Doo, I used to call him for Devin Dubnyk. Devin Dubnyk was such a big guy. He was a blocker as a goalie. He wasn't as agile. And what we found is he got lower and lower. And something that was interesting, and this is something that I noticed, is, and as a goalie, and we'll be bringing in, I got something up for you guys. I'm hoping to have a monthly person to come in and to speak on goaltending, very specifically around hockey. So Jadelyn, who played out in Ontario for the Windsor team, we want to be able to bring her in on a regular basis on a monthly, and then she can analyze some of the stuff we talk about. She's a great coach around it and understanding. So one of the things that I notice is, if you think of a first baseman keeps his hand up and straight out in front of him. If you go back and watch the replay, something that we notice with Edmonton goalies is they get a habit of their hand being down.
It's weird.
And it's a blocking motion generally, because if they're up here, they're worried about down below in the bottom left side or the bottom right side, depending on their left or right-handed. And interesting enough, their hand is too far back.
Yeah.
So if you actually watch some of your goaltenders that Sean Burke works with, their hands are up nice and high and in front of them. And even on a break, the glove will be like covering another probably 30% of that space. Yeah. And so, frankly, I really, not that I think Dustin Schwartz is terrible, but you got to try something. How do you change every coach with all these different regimes, and you don't change just the one goalie coach? Because it's also a psychological game, right? Being two. So, okay. So what do you think cost him? Do you think it was just that? What about some of the calls? You were saying that there was adjustment. There was a lot of stuff. Like, look at Ekholm and his post. His face is bloodied up. There was no call. We got a call in game 4. It was game 5, that where Broberg was called off, that affected the whole game. Jack Eichel is holding his, or was it Stone? One of them were
both. Broberg and Eichel were both holding, and Steve Kazari in the back end close to the blue line.
Yeah, from the other side of the ice. Yeah.
Rather than the ref, not
right there. Yeah,
that was right there. Right. Yeah. They both should have went off at the same time. Yeah. But that reflected in 2 quick immediate goals being scored, because then we also got a high sticking call on the Oilers, right?
Mark on Eichel.
Yeah. So I guess, Jed, in responding to that, like you've been in some really intense games. You played in Grey Cups. I know the officials are totally different. Yeah. But how do you manage that as a professional athlete out on that field, out on that ice, when the officials you feel are biased?
Well, it's really difficult because they're the final authority on the field, and they control the pace of the play, right? Like, if you recall the '96 Grey Cup, the phantom Flutie fumble. A, he fumbled the ball. B, we recovered it, and C, we had. So don't get me started on that. But it's really difficult to overcome that because there's nothing you can do about it. It's better now with the replay, but I find that even though you have the replay, you still have that human element. You still have that subjective quality. Like you see the Toronto game where it was a goal. Well, you know what? That's an optical illusion. Like somebody's always got an opinion about it, and you know what? Depending on where you sit on the issue or which team you cheer for. That's the beauty of it, right? You'll never be able to remove that element 100%. The only thing that you can control is how you respond to it. And that's a really difficult thing to respond to when you feel like the momentum, because it's such a momentum. Hockey, probably more so than most sports, is a momentum. Like if you score right before the period or whatever, that you can carry that coming out. Yeah. It's such a beautiful game that way. And when the officiating affects the game that way, it's even more so, And when you get and I say it, I like to call it the hockey gods. The hockey gods are smiling on you. If you recall, Edmonton was down to LA and it wasn't looking good. And I remember Trent and I were texting each other, and I was like, man, the hockey gods have to smile on the Oilers at some time, right? And then bang, 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 they scored, and they ended up winning that game. I think it was game 6. And I was like, man, it's over. And then all of a sudden, boom, they came alive, and that's the beauty of it. But when you're a team that relies really heavy on the power play like Edmonton is, and you have that. That's really, and I think it magnifies it even more. You know, if you're really good 5v5 like Vegas is, you don't get too worried about it. They didn't seem to get too panicked when they were down, which was really weird because you're going up against McDavid and Draisaitl, like what most teams would be shivering in their skates, right? But you know, Vegas, full marks to them, man. I actually have to think that they're probably one of the favorites from this one out. It's going to be an interesting matchup between them and Dallas.
Well, and that brings us
to Dallas, so it'll definitely be interesting. Yeah, it really, people don't appreciate how maybe, I don't want to say underrated, but maybe not as valued their blue line is, because they've got some big names on there. Petrangelo, Shea Theodore. You've got Alex Martinez, Stanley Cup champion with Petrangelo. You got Braden McNabb, also, is a fighter. That top four can really bring it. Saigon is asking, Panthers or Canes starts or not. So, Jed, we don't usually like to do predictions, but if we're going to do it because the fans ask, who would you have in each of those series going to the Stanley Cup final?
Man, I'm going to... The issue for me is Dallas and goaltending. They have an incredible goaltender, and, and we all know in the playoffs, if you have a hot goaltender, good luck, My gut says it's going to be Dallas and Florida, just because of that. I think that, when you're coming down the wire, the whistles are in the refs' pockets, everything's getting clogged up in the middle, and the goalies are making left. I mean, those two goalies are just insane. So I that's who I like to be in the final, and I think that who's going to win it? I think Tkachuk might be raising the cup.
Whoa.
Well, hey, won't that piss everybody off in Calgary?
I wonder how his dad's going to feel about it, finally being able to lift the cup.
I know.
Well, hey, so most Oiler fans would say, well, at least it's time Matthew Tkachuk lifts something else other than his jock cup, right?
Yeah.
So it's interesting, you're saying, Matthew Tkachuk, and I'm sure some, Oiler fans are like, oh, how could you say that because he played for Calgary? But on the other hand, as an Oiler, you're a fan, you're like thinking, oh, man, let's just kick it more to the Flames down south, right?
Yeah, but you know what? Also, if he was on your team, he would be your favorite player. Like, he's that guy, right? Like, I mean, he's the guy that you just absolutely hate. But get him on your team, he's great.
Do we dare go back and actually say the Oilers could have had them on their team instead of Jesse Puljujarvi?
Yeah.
I don't even want to talk about that.
Jesse's on the Canes, and he's been playing in their top six.
Good for him.
Right? And he's not producing the same way, right? So, but.
Hey,
such a nice kid.
So because we're talking about the Oilers, do I dare go back and say that we traded out the pick for Griffin Reinhart that turned out to be Matthew Barzal also? Do I say that?
Griffin Reinhart. Oh, man.
Oh, man. Speaking of the man who did that trade, he's being interviewed for the GM position in Pittsburgh. So good luck, Pittsburgh, if you decide on that.
Yeah.
Sorry. Who were you mentioning?
Peter Chiarelli.
Oh, Peter Chiarelli. So, well, Jed, I'll tell you what. So since you gave us a prediction, which thank you very much. And by the way, I thought that when you're saying shivering in the skates, it really made cool sense because we're talking about you're on ice, right? You're shivering. Oh, yeah. I love that. That's a dad.
I like
that's more.
That.
Yeah. Dad joke stuff though. We're dads, so we get it. And Pavel's learning it. He's a new dad, so he's going to catch on to these jokes.
I've been out
okay.
Since before my kiddo was around.
So just before we came on the air, that's true. So Pavel, we were talking before we let Jed go. Let's just ask him and speak into the Arizona situation, and then we'll cover it more in detail. But just regarding what's going on and stuff there. For Jed, you had a question that we were talking about earlier.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, so Jed, we wanted to know your thought. I mean, like with any franchise, the arena wasn't approved. That was the vote that just went through in Tempe. What does it mean? Because you've been on the business side as well. The importance or the value of having a sports teams in a city and what it means to not only the community, but the fans and what maybe your thoughts are on this general whole thing with Arizona. Will they move or will they not?
I think they will move. I think that's the fourth largest television market in the country in Houston there. I think they're going to move it. They're going to put it somewhere. I think that there's a reason why they were playing in a college arena because I think they had a bit of an understanding that this thing will get approved. I don't see any reason for them to stick around now. In terms of like how that feels, I guess you could ask the average person living in Las Vegas right now how they feel about the Vegas Golden Knights. You know, that was the first professional franchise to make the move, because nobody would touch Vegas for many years because of the issues around gambling and all that. Now, you know, that's all you see on TV when you're watching a game, right? So, but they have such a loyal cult following right now because of that, because they were the first major sports franchise league to take a chance, and they came in, and now they just have like they do pretty well, you know. And when you lose a franchise, that's demoralizing. I mean, you can ask a person in Winnipeg, or you can ask a person in I mean, Colorado lost their hockey team. You know, and they didn't get another one until Quebec lost theirs, right? So, and I don't like it when people say that Bettman has it in for Canadian teams, because if that was the case, Edmonton wouldn't be playing hockey here right now, because he was really instrumental in getting that OEG thing going. And I also, you know, Atlanta moved to Winnipeg. I'm a Winnipeg of all places. Like, there's nothing to do there. So I can't say he's got it in for Canadian franchises. But I do think that he likes those big expansion checks, and I think that they will definitely take a really hard look at Houston.
Yeah. So, hey, I'm just trying to remember the years. So you were playing football during the expansion into the U.S., no?
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Birmingham, you know, we played all over. Memphis, all over. It's pretty godforsaken places.
Okay. So that means, so that means you've actually probably had conversations with some of the boys who actually went through teams that they played on. They didn't know if they're going to stay. There was a lot of uncertainty. You know,
that's terrible.
What are the things that they like? What would it be like for an athlete to go through that?
Oh, it's terrible, because, you know, but we're talking CFL now. Okay, you don't know if you're going to even get paid, so you're hustling. Because I talked to the guys on the Las Vegas team, the Las Vegas posse, who said that it was a race to get to the bank to cash those checks.
Oh my gosh!
They didn't want to be one of the last people there and risk the checks bouncing, and that's like so. Yeah, that's real.
Oh man,
you know, that's your livelihood. So
wow. Yeah, actually, I was going to say, you know, is that maybe why they forgot to pay him his check? Is that why the very first game that played the Vegas Posse? By the way, Anthony Calvillo came from the Vegas Posse. For those that didn't know that, but interesting enough, remember he did, instead of for "O Canada," it was to the tune of "O Christmas Tree."
Oh, Christmas Tree. Oh, Tannenbaum. Yeah. What's this guy doing? He didn't even bother doing any research, but the internet was just getting started back then. So I don't know.
He's lucky, man. Otherwise, well, mind you, who knows? He might have actually had a career podcasting after that.
Becoming infamous.
Yeah. I hope his pun game is strong.
Right. Before we let you go, and I'll let Evan finish with one more question, but I'm going to ask, because I know you are still loyal to the Elk, or the former Eskimos. Any thoughts on the season? Any kind of inclination? I know we have some CFL fans, NFL fans as well, but CFL fans, and
you know,
maybe a turnaround, or what's going on there?
Well, I think they're putting all their chips on Cornelius. They think that he's going to, you know, make the next step in progression, a lot like what we were talking about with the Oilers, like the young goalie, the Jeff Skinner. You know, the guys that you keep around are the guys that learn from their mistakes and refine their game accordingly, right? So, and I think that that's the expectation. Winning cures everything. You will know that. You know, like you can say what you want, but until you start winning games, you know, nothing's going to change. It's just going to keep, you know, being more of the same. Which right now, I think they posted I think they lost $4 million last year. So. That's not sustainable, right? I mean, unfortunately, they have a lot of money in their stabilization fund, but you know that's not something they don't want to be posting losses. And the best way to cure that is to win and put seats in the bums in the seats, because the gate-driven league, the only way they survive is by people making it to the game. So hopefully they'll. I think that I'm feeling pretty good, but every team's undefeated right now, right? So you know, everybody's happy. I think that this year more than any other, they've got a lot more. Consistency and more a core group of guys that they can actually move forward with, instead of like, you know, quarterback by committee like last year and the year before.
Yeah, I mean that's awesome. I mean, it's great that off the field a lot of stuff has been changing, which has really helped the image, I think, in the community. It's just a matter of, so get out there, man. If you're in the Edmonton region or able to get out to games, guys, get behind, support them, do what you can, buy the merchandise. You know what? Yeah, if you're not entertained on the field, you'll be entertained off the field while you're there hanging out with all the boys and girls and the kids, man.
Great way to spend a summer day. Yeah.
Exactly. I've been able to kind of get in because I have a friend working the bar in that VIP alumni lounge. So that was fun. And I got to meet some of the former players there. It was a good time. And I definitely had one too many, maybe pretzels. Let's say that for the kids out there.
That's where I go every game. So it's fun.
We have had a few shows in the past for people who are Edmonton fans, and they said if we ever had you on the show again, one was from last year and had a couple this year. So they said if you could suggest to the Elks organization that they would love to see an alumni game of the Oilers on ice with the former Eskimos of the alumni, or the double E. So if you can throw that out there, there's a lot of fans that said they'd pay to come to Commonwealth and see an outdoor game.
But you know what? They did that, I think, in '93.
Yeah. I remember that.
Trent scored a goal and rode his stick the length of the ice.
No way.
Pissed off a couple of the old alumni from the Oilers there. They were chasing him around the rink. That was too bad.
Oh, man. All right, Sajin over on YouTube following us. Hey, Sajin, thanks, man. He says, thank you, Jed. Reverend the Cat, enjoyed the show, guys. He's probably popping out. So, anyway, hey, Jed.
I'm surprised that it was in '93. It must have been Gary Bettman taking over because that was also the last time Canada had a cup. So.
It's been a bit of a drought.
Oh, man. All right, Jed. Well, thanks so much for joining us again, man. It's been a pleasure. Just remember, keep your stick on the ice if you are playing hockey there, bud.
I will. Thank you very much.
All right. Cheers. Thanks for joining in. Oh, man. He's always great for the show, man. I love his stories. And, man, if you've ever seen a super fan, I definitely, you know what I love to see? I love to see the big guy all dressed up with all that Oilers makeup on at a game. Sometimes he hangs out with Trent Brown. Trent Brown from James H. Brown Associates, by the way, guys out there. He's a big part of the Elks as well as the Edmonton Oilers Foundation.
He's a great community liaison and leader, and he's done a lot for the community, and he continues to do so, and we appreciate everything you do, and we thank him for taking some time to coming on the show and just showing some love. So
yeah, absolutely. Hey, just let's throw a big thing out there again to the Sports Empire Network. Some of you guys are catching us right now. I can see you on my screen. You guys are following us from over on YouTube and some of your Facebook channels, guys. Thanks for joining in. We are the hockey content, or maybe a part. I don't know. Maybe they'll replace us someday. I did get news that today, Key, who is her and Freddie do run most of the Sports Empire stuff. Guys, thank you for following us over on the Sports Empire Spotify. So you guys have been coming on the platform, and it looks like we're two guys in hockey are getting the top hits on Spotify, guys. So much. Thank you very much. And just want to mention, if you guys go back and go into our page at Two Guys in Hockey Talk, you'll notice it says platforms. And in that platform is the Spotify platform. You can go directly there. He just made me know this today that I guess Sports Empire is also up on Amazon Music.
Yes.
So we'll make sure to add that in. I guess my co-host knew that, and I did not. What you're supposed to update me, man? Update me.
I thought you knew. I thought you were the brains behind this operation, since I know nothing about hockey or Amazon.
As well as I'd like to just make mention that we are looking for writers. We want to start filling our page. Again, we're in the early phases of this. We know we got lots of more work to do in our writing. My goal is to get like a couple articles out a week. If you can only do one every 2 weeks, we're okay with that. Any type of thing you want to talk about hockey, it can be another league. So Tanner Wilson's going to be coming on. I'll talk to you about him a little bit more once we get him up on the site. And then what you're able to do is share it to your social media, and we will share it to ours, all the articles that are being put up there. So some of the stuff that we will talk about on the show, sometimes we'll take that from the show if we don't have enough time, and we'll actually put it into an article. And so you can find the cat, my co-host Pavel here, and myself, Revenev, and find some of our stuff up there and get in. So guys, it's you'll definitely enjoy it. And again, follow our former guests, including thanks to Jed Roberts for coming on to the show for us. So we were talking about the Arizona Coyotes. I think it's important that maybe we go back and let's talk about the Coyotes again. There's a little bit more. Did you want to hit in on a little bit more information?
I'll kind of lay down what's been kind of happening thus far.
Sure.
Because there's a lot of moving parts to this, and I'm sure people are kind of still reeling from the results yesterday. So essentially, the vote had happened in Tempe. There wasn't a big turnout, no matter what it was. I know it was a mail-in ballot for some people at the beginning. There was a lot of belief in the Arizona organization and the NHL that they're going to win this probably by 10 points. Now, polls don't always show the whole thing. We know this in politics. Aaron probably can allude to this if he's watching. And, so they did lose. And of course, the owner, Alex Morello, came out and kind of said he's a bit shocked. The organization's shocked. They're going to look at it. They do still have that contract with Mullet Arena to stay there for the next 2 years because they did sign a 3-year agreement. And, there's running wild speculations of where they can go. Jed kind of alluded to it. Quebec. I know that there's a owner, Ryan Smith, not the one from the Edmonton, but out in Utah, owning the Utah Jazz. He's willing to have a team. However, he's looking at potentially having a fresh expansion team rather than one that he inherits. Arizona, essentially, it came down to there was a lot of misinformation on the ground, according to some Tempe residents, to the point where executives from the Arizona Coyotes organizations were going door to door trying to convince people to say yes on the 3 propositions. So there was 3 propositions, and they were moving a landfill to get rid of it to put in entertainment district center, which didn't just include the arena, and it included apartments. But as you know, there was also the lawsuit from the city of Phoenix for the airports and them dealing with all that.
Yeah.
The apartments not being high enough, even though there's an airport just nearby. There was an indigenous group that was part of this, First Nations that wanted to partake and invest, but they themselves can't have the arena because of gambling rights and what that looks like. So there's a whole logistics situation there. And of course, a few of the players and people in the industry have responded, including Clayton Keller, who, kind of said, he was upset with kind of an emoji about the whole situation. So the future is uncertain. Bill Daly did announce that they should tentatively play next season in Mullet Arena. But I think this raises way more questions, and I see this team moving now, even though they're going to keep looking to see if they could do something because, as Jed mentioned, they're one of the top viewed ratings, TV rated states. We all know Matthew, Austin Matthews is from there. Another Toronto prospect, Matthew Nyes, young prospect, rookie coming up. He's from there. They have a really good hockey youth program. That's going to be impacted, both men and women, like boys and girls. So there's a whole slew of things happening right now. And it's muddled. It's really muddled, or it's clear as mud, as one would say. But Evan, your thoughts on the whole situation?
The referendum failed. Now, many fans were already saying, listen, the people in Arizona spoke previously. They didn't want to go take in games in Glendale. Different people had different takes. There was issues with the owners. Glendale, Scottsdale. The ownership, not getting payments in time. The questions of, how they talk about making payments. There was a point in time when some of the players were struggling with some of the payments a few years back, right? We're dating back a little bit more. Now Tempe is saying that they have no interest. Listen, I want to go back on our show and remind people that I shared with you that Saravelli brought this up. He said that in a referendum, when everyone was saying this was going to happen, he says, I don't know. Because when you go to those ballots, it's really hard because you're voting for other things that are most important. And that's just a little extra thing on the side. I don't know if most people are going to know the facts behind this. And so did they have a good chance to fail? I think that they did. because people go in to vote on the main topics and they check off those things of whatever they remember that somebody has told them. Now, the Tempe population, I know one of our followers, Lost Trucker Zill, talked about that. The population was small. You don't get good voter turnouts. Now, this is important. 25% of the voters, the number one group of the voters, you guys ready for this? The number one group of voters were 55 to 70 years old. That's the number one. The second group of the highest voter turnout were between the ages of 70 to 85. That was the second highest. And now listen, the lowest voter turnout was the university age students, basically who were anywhere between the ages, I believe it was 24 and under. They were the lowest. It was like sitting around 3%. Now, I feel bad for the owners, but you know what? They didn't spend time. And I've had, just so you guys know, today I was in connection with someone that I trust, very good source down there, right in Arizona, a couple of them. And, you know, the bottom line is they blame ownership. Ownership didn't spend. They spent the money on people who were already convinced. And what they should have done is gone out there, because there was a political agenda on here where they wanted to put a stop to this. And they talked about how it's going to use up your taxpayer money. It wasn't going to use up your taxpayer money. There was not a cent of taxpayer money ever going to this outside of maybe infrastructures. They have a dump that's now still sitting there. It's going to be taxpayer money now for that dump still to get cleaned up, and or they're going to get probably sued if they don't clean that up. They didn't have a good campaign, and really they should have advertised properly and got this all set up. They had a lot of time to build. They tried to wait too long to get this out there, and they put themselves in a bad situation. Who I feel bad for are the Arizona fans, and I know you're out there because you're the number 3 state in the United States, even watching our show. I know there's a lot of shows that you guys can watch, but if you're watching our show and you're the 3rd highest state checking things out, whether you're formerly Canadian, you just jumped up, and most of you actually are from Arizona. In fact, by the way, Penny Billionaires from our theme song, Invincible, that's where they're from, Arizona. But man, you guys got a lot going on. So yeah, let me just say this before we maybe call it a wrap, and we'll get into some other stuff here. Here's a problem. There's really nothing left there. They're not going downtown. It's not happening. The Suns just got bought in the NBA. They doubt the owner wants to own this team. He's not going to share with the current owners of the NHL team. They could move to reservation lands, but there's issues because of the casinos. And if they do, it's not their land, and they're going to have to share a big chunk of that portion. Will they get enough money? Who knows? So they're really in a bad situation. And are they just going to have to pull the plug and move? But the owners are in a situation. If you want to go to Houston, you know, hello, Houston Aeros. Is there a revision going to come? It's going to take actually a sale of the team. Nobody's bringing these owners in. These guys are really in a bad place, and I don't think there's anything left but to sell if they're going to leave. And I don't see them going back to Scottsdale / Glendale again. It didn't work. They were losing money already. So I feel bad for the hockey fans in the desert. And please, I think, Pavel, you mentioned it with players coming out of there. There are teams coming out of Arizona that are playing in some Canadian tournaments, even stuff like the Brick Invitational Tournament that are coming out, and they're good. And superstar players like Austin Matthews and others, and guys like Nyes. There's a lot of good players coming in. They're in the AHL. There's players out of Arizona that are now playing over in the KHL.
Let's even just allude. You can allude whether Logan Cooley, who's coming off of playing right now in college, does he want to play in Arizona like for a year? Like, what does his career look like? Right, he's a top prospect. What are your thoughts on him coming in? I think this is on management, poorly managing this whole situation, and totally
ownership. Would you say management of ownership, right? Not the current management.
Management could have helped out in promoting this a bit better too, as well. I understand they're trying to build something on the ice. I agree. So ownership essentially like really, really dropped the ball. But like your thoughts, like Logan Cooley, players, do they want to go play there if they don't have any concrete? Jed just talked about players and not getting paid. Like, are they going to get paid for next season? Right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, Zilstra, you're right. 18,000. I know it was a poor turnout. Zilstra had contacted me yesterday when everything came down. And you're right. They screwed themselves. The paying the bills.
Clerical error.
Oh yeah, exactly.
I wish I could make a clerical error on my bills.
Well, look at that. Yeah, in the galas tonight. Hey, way to go. Make sure you drive safe. And remember, do not keep your stick on the ice because that means your eyes aren't on the road.
I love the jerseys. They have one of the best, if not the best, logos and jerseys in the NHL.
I like this one.
Phenomenal. They really knocked it out of the park. As much as people like to harp on the small 5,000 bullet arena, they packed it. They made it work. But clearly, it's not working. And I gotta say to the NHL executives like Gary Bettman, like you gotta hear, like, this isn't working right now. You gotta move. And the most logical move right now, as you alluded, is Houston. The reason being, it's a team that stays in the West. You are not moving Columbus or the Detroit Red Wings into the West Conference. They're definitely going to fight that. You think that ownership there are going to want to go somewhere? So, and as much as I would want Quebec to go there, or maybe even Toronto having a second team, you can't move to the East. You got to stay West. So, Kansas City, Houston, those are my pick. Maybe Portland, but I mean, with Portland, you just had Seattle succeed. So do you really want to put another team in there? Anyways, just my thoughts.
Very, very good. Zilstra, who actually has been to the Roadrunners games, and we shared some on our clips. She says if they move, the Roadrunners should head over to Mullet because the place really rocks. And yeah, you've been there, Zil. You know what it actually feels like. And you know what? They built it up, so why not? So this is, I actually think this, my intuition says the team is obviously going to be gone. People are heartbroken right now. People are angry. They're all upset. And I get it, man, to lose your franchise that you did not plan to. But I think it's going to get sold to Houston. That's my biggest. If the owners don't want to give it up, the only possibility I see maybe is a co-partnership deal with somebody that's in. And I don't see that because I don't think they want to. If the owners want to keep it, it's not going to Utah first. It's going to go to Houston first, in my opinion. If the owners want to be involved, I think Kansas City's their only chance. And they do have an arena there in place. And maybe that owner would be desperate enough, someone who wants a team, to go into a three-way partnership maybe for it so that they could share off of that revenue. So
also, if you remember back in the 90s when there was a bit of a lockout before Gary, I don't know if it was Gary Bettman that was in charge at the time because he came in around 92, 93. One of the stipulations that they had moving forward is that the NHL wanted all their owners to own the stadium. So do you really think that they're going to go to the Phoenix Suns owner and say, hey, can we play out of your barn where they have no control? Like,
no, they're not. They're not. Yeah, good point. Zilstra thinks they're going to KC or Portland. I'm going to say that Portland's going to be too watered down and Seattle's too new. I don't think that's a possibility. But I do believe, and then see Utah, the reason I think is like you mentioned, they would prefer probably to be in not a relocation, but there is a possibility before Bettman leaves, they expand 2 more teams to be the league with 34 teams, right? To be that league. I could see that potentially happening. More revenue gets it up the next level. So I know we're going to have to close this off. I got some other things I want to talk about. I want to go to Trey Living. We're talking about the GMs. Let's talk about Kyle Dubas and talk about Trey Living. So listen, the Pittsburgh Penguins, I thought have been a good destination. They have been interested in Trey Living. Now, it's not said that he's their highest interest, but it's sounding like what has happened is the Calgary Flames have blocked any communication. The Flames are not allowed to talk to Trey Living to explore any new job opportunities.
The Pittsburgh.
No,
the Flames.
No. The Flames are not allowing Trey Living to explore anything because his contract does not expire till June 30th.
Yes.
So there is they will not give permission to any other NHL team, nobody to talk to him.
Yes.
So the problem is that leaves him, and that's really strange. And frankly, I think that's an unfair move by the Flames. So if you're a Flames fan, you might not want to hear. You might want to close your eyes. See, the two parties agreed to part ways now, right? At the end of the season is what we're told. Now, the Penguins need to hire, and they need to do it soon. They've already started their process. They're willing to bring Trey Living, but they need someone in after the draft, right? So June 30th is far too long of wait. It's going to be the day after the draft. It's going to be before the opening of free agency. He may not have been their top candidate, but now the chances are that he's not going to go there anyway. And it's going to make it really difficult for him to go to any team until after, which means let's see what's left over. And I think that here's a couple of things. I think it's dirty pool for the Calgary Flames to do this. And I believe that other general managers who may be interested in a job in Calgary, it's going to smell rotten to them. And I think because of that, now, if you're asking, and we get this quite often, who do we see? What are we hearing? I'm going to say that the GM, if they bring in someone with experience, there's possibilities, and it's been explored. Mark Bergeron, Bergevin, sorry. Now, maybe Ray Whitney. He applied in San Jose. He was a runner-up to Greer. They could make, because these guys want jobs. Or does this now? And I know there's Stan Bowman, but he's not going to know till July 1st if his suspension. So he is not allowed to apply or work anywhere till July 1st as well.
Until the NHL clears it.
This is what I wonder is going to happen. Does this mean it's going to be too hard to bring guys from outside? So Calgary is going to go with an inside man. And if they do, that's going to be Craig Conroy. That's what it's going to be. Now, that's good news if you're a Flames fan, because chances are he's probably going to bring the AHL coach Love with him, and they're just going to continue. But I'd be worried as a Flames fan if you're not rebuilding, then bringing in guys that don't have that much experience at that level. If they do hire outside, look for Andrew Burnett or Gerard Gallant as possibilities to be the coaches to come in. Now, ready for a long shot, and he might want this chance, and this might be good news. What about, and we talked about him earlier, the goalie whisperer, Sean Burke. He's been looking for a GM position. Yeah. He's out there. There is talk. Remember, he once played for the Calgary Flames. He was a part of their organization. Yes, he's in charge of all the development for Vegas. He's going to have to finish the season. But man, wouldn't they like that? Wouldn't you like that for Markstrom to get a GM who's a goalie whisperer? So who knows? And Sean Burke was in the running with Ken Holland back 4 years ago for the Edmonton Oilers. He was wanting to get in on it. So, and then the only two long shots, Kevin Weeks has been wanting to get into GMing. He's been putting his name in, and Brian Lawton as well. But I don't see them. I'm not hearing their names anywhere around. So who knows?
Yeah, and then there's, of course, they're going to continue to look at outside voices that potentially could apply, whether it's former agents, GMs and or presidents and or leaders in other sports, NBA, NMLB. You hear those names potentially because they have that experience. So yeah, there's definitely going to be some movements, and you definitely want to get a sense of who your GM is by draft day, because you have to start drafting players and you have to know what your roster is going to look like. Otherwise, you're going to be hooped, right? And then trades start happening, and who are you signing and who are you bringing in? And that includes Toronto. And I don't think, Evan, and I know you beat this drum to death, but I don't think Kyle Dubas is sticking around. I think he took a lot after his press conference, and, you know, the effect it had on him and his family. And I think that was an indication that it's possibly, you know what, I don't know if this is for me anymore. I want to take a step back and maybe return. Maybe, I don't know, I could be wrong, because they should have known by now, but they don't. And they have a big, big to-do list, especially with Austin Matthews coming up and his no-trade clause coming in on July 1st, as well as
very true. Very true. So, by the way, it's Brad Pascal, who is the GM of the Wranglers, Zylstra, that you're asking about. Brad Pascal is being considered. There is a lot of talk out there. But here's the thing. Craig Conroy, he's already been assistant general manager. He's done more around the cap. He has more on analytics. And the thing with Craig, if they don't hire him, he's going to be gone somewhere else. And there is rumor that depending who buys the team and do they remove Dorian in Ottawa, there's going to be a rotation. This is like unrestricted free agency for GMs this summer. It's going to be crazy. By the way, go over to Les.
Les says I heard also Salt Lake for the team moving from Arizona. And a name to keep an eye out is Jeff Botterill, who used to be in Buffalo. keep an eye out for that name because he used to be a
Jason.
GM.
Jason.
Sorry, Jason.
That's Jason Botterill. Yeah, no, yeah, and I don't see him moving right now. Things are going good for him. But you know what? If he wants to get his chance over there, but again, Calgary is not going to get the top end guys. When you block Brad Treliving from not getting another job, how does that leave a good taste in your mouth? Just like there's this thing around some players not wanting to go to Vegas and at a high rate, because if you go there, you might be traded because of salary caps, right? Teams got to be careful how they handle stuff. And right now, ownership, I'm as far as I'm concerned, ownership of Calgary has screwed this up. Terrible. So, okay, let's talk. Kyle Dubas, you were talking about. So my thing was Kyle Dubas. They want Kyle Dubas back. That's what I've been focusing on. There's a lot of people thinking Kyle Dubas wants to go somewhere. If you listen to his press conference, I had already heard some rumblings about personal reasons that he may not GM next year. And now when I heard the press conference about family, and it was very weird. Right now, a lot of insiders, even Chris Johnstone, who does a lot of reporting for TSN and stuff, was saying it was like a 5-hour thing for the exit interviews, waiting. The response you got from Kyle wasn't scripted. There's something happening. All I can say is
didn't speak either, and normally he does.
And let's not talk about this today, Toronto fans, but let's talk about Shanahan. Next week, I wouldn't mind talking about Shanahan, because what is the one constant during this period of time, and the guy who's helped build and put the people. Yeah, remember the Shanahan ban? He used to be a part of the Department of Player Safety.
He's been there.
He used to have videos and stuff. But I'm a little worried about the way he runs the organization, just from an outside view. I don't know the inside workings, just so I can say that. So, Kyle, this is a bad situation, because Kyle's going to have to make a decision. And what I'm hearing is the decision will probably be made within the next week to 2 weeks max, because Kyle will not leave. He loves the organization. He's not going to go play with another GM team this year. They have put some stuff out there and want to negotiate. He's got to make some decisions. So this is what I wonder. Does Shanahan or someone step up? Because to me, the best candidate out there, if Kyle Dubas steps up and says, no, I'm not even looking to be in the running, is this a place for Brad Treliving to end up? Because that would be a good hire, but he can't talk to Calgary. So there's nothing that can be done till after free agency, which really puts a stick in it. So do they allow their assistant general manager, who people talk about as well, having that chance and that opportunity? So anyway, a lot of stuff.
I know they've been grooming Jason Spezza. I don't think he'll be GM, but I think they're grooming him for coming up. And for Edmonton fans, I know we talked a lot with Jed about it, but it looks like Holland will stay on for one more year. The rumors of Nicholson retiring are false. Ryan Richard proved that he's sticking on for a little bit more, and that they're looking potentially at Steve Staios taking over as GM next year, as it's Holland's last year at contract. But Holland, I think, has earned his 5-year term here. I know there's been some issues there. Bernie's talking about Craig for Calgary. Evan, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think Craig Conroy is how could you not like that? They've done great with the AHL farm team. They're within the system. They were better off with Lamoriello.
Calgary also has to be mindful of the election on May 29th in Alberta, because that will also dictate whether or not the arena will be approved. Another big implementation of how they look. They were better off with Lou Lamoriello. Yeah, and he's been doing well in New York Islanders. He's the oldest GM, 80-plus years, and it looks like he's going strong and going to continue. Can we just give some love to Ron Francis and what he did with that Seattle team, Evan? Can we just appreciate?
Oh, well, okay, we're in overtime now, so I will appreciate. But yeah, no, Ron Francis, I every week I step back and I just say, wow, I can't believe it. I did pick them only because every time I didn't, they won. So I apologize to Kraken fans. I shouldn't have joined you and said that I think you can win that series. But, man, you guys push it to the limit. You have fantastic fans. I'm looking for the day the rivalry will really pick up especially between Calgary and Edmonton and Vancouver. I really want to see the Vancouver-Seattle rivalry begin. I think that would be excellent. I'd like to throw something out about Lamoriello on Long Island. Everyone knows, or if you don't, he's 80 years old right now. He's not going to, no one's going to, he's got an empty, basically they go to him with an empty checkbook is essentially what they're going to do. And he can work as long as he wants, as long as he keeps doing the job. They like him on Long Island. They're making money on Long Island. Things are going good. But little birdie, I got one little birdie that's giving me some information that consider Lou can actually wait out past July 1st. And maybe that could be your destination for Brad Treliving.
Oh,
that would be. So anyway, it's something that we need to take a look at and see where it's going. And look at that. Zill's a lover. So, all right, man. Well, it's been another ring-a-ding-dong dandy. We should, again, constantly, Pavel the Cat is constantly telling me that we need to go buy the domain name and brand for Two Guys in Overtime. We could be any show. We could be football. We could be CFL or you name it, right? But anyway, any last thought, bud, before we call it a wrap?
Well, we don't want to take away all the jobs from all the fantastic people at Sports Empire, so I guess we'll just stick to hockey. It's been fun. I'm looking forward to the Final Four. When people say we need to grow the game, this is growing the game, and just because your team's not in it doesn't mean you can't watch some exciting, intense hockey. It's been fun, and I'm looking forward to seeing who hoists the Stanley Cup.
Oh, excellent. Again, thanks again to Sports Empire for giving us our platform, for working together. Make sure that you go onto our site at Two Guys in Hockey Talk. You jump on there and you can follow all the platforms. Follow us even on their Spotify at Sports Empire and Amazon Music. We'll get that up there and running. Thanks again to Key and the gang and Freddie and all for everything that they do, and all you guys are checking in. As well as I do just want to give a toss out there to Penny Billionaires and exclusively giving us the rights to their song that we are about to go out to today, guys. So again, it's been a fabulous time. I just like to say in the meantime and in between time,
keep your sticks on the ice and your head up.
Cheers.
Safe.
I'm just so sick and tired. I'm hanging on a wire, a foot over the fire, and it's burning. I can feel it inside. Done with the same cliche, done with the day after day. There's got to be a way. Now is the time to break the tie. I'll live, I'll die.